I am John Harris, 72 years old, a widower, a retired engineer. I have lived in this house for more than 4 decades. Every corner of it still breathes with the presence of my wife, Mary, who left this world 5 years ago. Her favorite porcelain vase still rests by the window, though it has a crack along the side from the day our son kicked a ball inside the living room. The old piano gathers dust now, but I can still hear her fingers dancing across the keys when I walk by it at night. These walls are not just wood and plaster, they are a museum of our lives. And yet, to my own family, they are nothing but real estate. It was on a quiet Sunday afternoon that the betrayal came crashing down. The kind of afternoon when the light is soft, when you expect peace, when your guard is down. My son Mark and his wife Lisa walked in with a folder. I thought maybe they were bringing insurance documents or helping me with some bank statement. That's how she presented it, calm, rehearsed, with that thin smile people wear when they've already decided your fate. She didn't waste a moment. She laid the folder on the coffee table and said the words that cracked my world in half. "Dad, it's time. You need to go to the nursing home." At first, I thought I misheard. My ears are not perfect anymore, but I knew what she said. I looked from her face to Mark's, searching for some denial, some hesitation, but he couldn't even meet my eyes. He just sat there, stiff, his hands clasped together like a boy caught cheating on a test. Lisa did the talking, her voice clear, steady, and sharp. "We've already found a good facility. They've got excellent staff, clean rooms, medical care on site. You'll be comfortable there." Comfortable. That word was like poison. Comfortable meant controlled. Comfortable meant stripped of choice. Comfortable meant locked away. I tried to breathe steadily, but my chest burned. "Why?" I asked, barely managing to keep my voice from shaking. "Why now?" Lisa leaned forward, her tone softened, almost patronizing. "You can't manage this house anymore, John. The stairs, the groceries, the bills, it's too much for you, and Mark has his own family now. It's better for everyone if you let us handle things." Handle things. My wife used to warn me, be careful when people say they'll handle things for you. What they mean is they'll take them from you. Her voice came back to me in that moment like a ghost at my shoulder. I looked down at the folder. My fingers trembled as I opened it, but not from weakness. Inside were neatly typed documents, an admission form for the nursing home, a financial agreement outlining monthly costs, and, this one made my blood run cold, a pre-written power of attorney naming Mark as the one who would control my assets. They had prepared everything. They had planned it all behind my back. I looked at my son, the boy I raised, the boy I taught to fish, the man whose rent I paid when he couldn't afford his first apartment. "Mark," I said quietly, "is this what you want?" He flinched but didn't answer directly. "Dad, it's for the best. You'll be safe there. You'll be taken care of." His voice broke halfway through. But he kept going, repeating Lisa's phrases like a puppet. I wanted to shout, to slam my fist down on the table, to tear those papers in half and throw them in her face. But I didn't. Because the moment they believed I was too weak to fight, I knew I had already won. So I put on the mask they wanted to see. I slouched lower in my chair, let my eyes wander like I was confused, let my hand shake as I picked up the pen. Lisa's smile widened, her confidence blooming as she thought the old man was finally beaten. I saw triumph in her eyes, the kind of triumph that only comes when someone believes they've destroyed you. I remembered the last night with Mary in this same living room, the night she whispered through her fading breath, "Don't let them treat you like you're nothing. You're not nothing, John. Promise me you'll stand tall." That memory lit a fire inside me, even as I lowered my head to the page. I signed slowly, my handwriting crawling across the line. Lisa leaned back, satisfied, as if she had claimed victory. Mark exhaled in relief, too cowardly to realize he was complicit in burying his own father alive. They thought I had surrendered, that the house and everything I had worked for were now theirs to carve up. But they didn't know that the signature I had just placed on that paper wasn't theirs. It was mine and my lawyer's, a trap woven weeks ago, waiting for them to step into. They gathered the folder quickly, thanked me with fake sweetness, and promised to make the transition smooth. As they walked out the door, Lisa's heels clicking against the wood floor, I stared at their backs with a calm that surprised even me. They believed they had erased me. They believed the house, the money, the legacy, all of it was already theirs. But they didn't see the storm boiling in my silence. They didn't see the gears turning behind the old man's eyes. They didn't know that the weak hand they saw tremble with the pen was already holding the rope that would hang their plans. I watched them leave, the door closing with a hollow thud, and whispered to the empty house, "You've made your move, now watch mine." The week that followed felt like I was living inside a theater, a cruel play where I had been cast as the helpless old man, while the real actors strutted and smirked on stage. Lisa took center spotlight, commanding every scene with her voice dripping honey and venom at the same time. Mark, my own son, had become her silent shadow. And me? I was the prop they were sure they could move at will. But they had no idea I was also the playwright, rewriting the script beneath their noses. Lisa started coming over daily, arms full of folders, envelopes, and binders. She was efficient, almost military in her planning. Every day she explained to me, slowly, condescendingly, what was going to happen. "We'll have movers come next week to start packing your things. Don't worry, Dad. We'll keep the important stuff safe." Safe. That word again. She used it so often it lost all meaning. Her version of safe meant stripped away, stored in boxes, hidden, sold. She walked around my house like a realtor staging a property. She touched the curtains my wife had sewn with her own hands, wrinkling her nose. "These will have to go. Buyers like lighter colors these days." She opened the cabinets in the kitchen and made notes, as if my pots and pans were items on a checklist. "The appliances are dated. We'll list them as is." She even entered our bedroom, my bedroom, without asking, running her fingers across Mary's old jewelry box. "We'll lock this away. Sentimental things should be secured." The word sentimental came out of her mouth like an insult. I stood in the hallway, cane in hand, watching her strip pieces of my life away with every comment. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I hunched my shoulders, let my face sag, and muttered a faint, "All right." She turned, satisfied, convinced I was folding. That was her fatal mistake. She confused patience with surrender. Mark rarely spoke during these visits. He trailed behind her, nodding at everything, his eyes darting anywhere but mine. I would catch him looking at the photographs on the wall, the one of him as a boy holding his first fish, me standing proudly beside him. His face would twitch, maybe from guilt, maybe from shame, but he never spoke up. Silence, I learned, is its own form of betrayal, sometimes sharper than words. At night, I heard them whispering in the kitchen when they thought I was asleep. My ears are old, but not useless. Lisa's voice carried. "He'll be gone by the end of the month," she said. "Once he's in, we can deal with the accounts. The trust is just sitting there. He doesn't even check statements anymore. We'll have everything organized by Christmas." Mark mumbled something, too low for me to hear. Lisa snapped back, "Don't start getting soft now. We've come too far." I sat in the dark, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. Every word was another nail in the coffin they were building for me, but I kept my silence, because silence was my weapon. Let them hammer away. When the time came, I would turn the coffin into their cage. The breaking point came when Lisa staged what she called a family discussion. She invited relatives, my niece Claire, my cousin Daniel, even my neighbor Mrs. Thompson. She wanted witnesses, people who would nod and agree that the nursing home was the right choice. I watched them file into my living room, sitting awkwardly on the couches, unsure why they had been summoned. Lisa stood like a hostess, smiling wide. "We want to talk about Dad's future," she announced, using that syrupy tone again. "It's important everyone understands the plan." I sat in my chair, a quilt draped over my legs, eyes lowered like I was drifting in and out of awareness, but every word carved into me like a blade. Lisa laid out the documents again, explaining in detail how I would move into the facility, how the house would be sold to cover costs, how Mark would take over the finances. She made it sound neat, logical, inevitable. "It's what's best for him," she concluded, looking around the room as if daring anyone to disagree. Claire shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Daniel stared at the floor. Mrs. Thompson, kind as she was, just patted my hand gently, murmuring, "They only want what's good for you." That was the cruelest part. Not the betrayal itself, but the audience clapping along, fooled by the mask Lisa wore. Then she pushed the folder toward me again. "Dad," she said sweetly, "let's finalize this. The home has a room ready for you. We just need your signature to secure it." She slid the pen across the table like it was a dagger wrapped in silk. I picked it up slowly. My hand shook. On purpose. I let my eyes glaze over, as though the words blurred on the page. "This one here, what is it?" I asked weakly, pointing to the power of attorney. Lisa leaned closer, eager to explain, her smile sharp. "That just makes things easier, Dad. You won't have to worry about bills or bank statements anymore. Mark will handle everything. You can finally rest. Rest." That word tasted like ash. Rest meant silence. Rest meant erasure. Rest meant death before death. But I nodded faintly, pretending to accept it. "Maybe you're right," I whispered, closing the folder. The room seemed to exhale in relief. Claire nodded weakly. Daniel avoided my eyes. Mrs. Thompson smiled sadly. To them, the verdict was done. The old man had surrendered. Lisa's grin widened. She placed the pen back in my hand and guided it toward the line where my name was printed. I lowered my head, shoulders sagging, and signed. Slowly, carefully, deliberately. Every stroke of my pen was a performance. Every letter, a line in the script I was writing. Lisa's eyes sparkled with triumph. Mark exhaled like a man unburdened. Around the room, the silent jury nodded approval. To them, it was over. To them, the old man had finally accepted his fate. But inside me, a storm raged, and the trap tightened. Every signature I gave them was worthless. Every smile I offered was a mask. Every silence I held was a weapon. They thought they were winning, but the truth was simpler. I was giving them enough rope to hang themselves. As they gathered the papers, as Lisa thanked me with her sugar-coated voice, I sat back and let my eyes rest on the photograph above the mantel. Mary in her garden, sunlight in her hair. I whispered inside myself, so quiet no one could hear. "They think I'm finished, love, but they've forgotten who taught me how to fight." The escalation was complete. Betrayal had filled every corner of my home. The jury had been fooled. The trap was disguised as surrender. And I sat there, playing the part of a man too weak to resist, while in reality, I had just tightened the noose around their necks. The night after Lisa's so-called family meeting, the house was unbearably quiet. Everyone had left convinced I had surrendered, convinced the old man had finally laid down his pride. I sat in my chair, staring at the empty folder on the coffee table, the pen marks still fresh in my memory. They believed those scribbles gave them power. They believed they had trapped me. But, in truth, I had been laying my own trap long before they ever thought of theirs. Months earlier, I had already felt the current shifting. Lisa's comments about downsizing, her questions about whether I still checked my bank statements, Mark's silence whenever money came up. None of it was casual. It was the drip, drip, drip of something darker. My wife Mary used to say, "Greed doesn't announce itself. It seeps through cracks until one day it floods the whole house." After she passed, I kept her words close, like a compass. And when I saw those cracks widening, I acted. One afternoon, while Lisa believed I was napping, I slipped out and visited an old friend, my lawyer, Charles Whitman. He had handled Mary's estate after she died. He was a patient man, gray hair like mine, sharp eyes that could cut through lies. I told him what I feared. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell me I was paranoid. He leaned forward, his voice low. "You're right to prepare. Families can turn when money is involved. We'll make sure they can't touch what's yours." Together we drafted a plan. We set up a trust fund, irrevocable, shielded by law so no signature, no scheme, no manipulation could pierce it. Every account, every asset, even the deed to the house was moved under the trust's protection. The sole beneficiary, my granddaughter, Zoe. She was young, innocent, untouched by greed, and the only one Mary had ever whispered might carry our family's dignity forward. Charles told me, "Once this is done, even if they wave a dozen papers in front of you, it won't matter. They'll be signing air." But Charles didn't stop there. He handed me a small device, no bigger than a lighter, a recorder. "Keep it with you," he said. "Let them speak freely. If they try anything, capture it. A man's memory can be doubted. A tape cannot." From that day on, I carried it everywhere, slipped into my pocket, resting on the table, humming quietly while Lisa poured her poison. Every whisper about selling my house. Every cruel joke about me being too weak. Every instruction about how Mark would handle things. All of it was caught, preserved, undeniable. The first time I pressed play alone, hearing Lisa's voice hiss through the tiny speaker. He'll sign anything. He doesn't even know what he's signing. I felt sick. But I also felt a strange calm. Betrayal had a sound now, a shape. It was no longer just my fear. It was evidence. So, when I signed her papers during that family meeting, I wasn't giving her victory. I was baiting her deeper into the trap. Every smile she gave, every nod Mark offered, every approving glance from the relatives, they were all walking willingly into the web I had spun. The morning after, Lisa called, her voice dripping with triumph. "Dad, the nursing home said we can secure the room once we process the paperwork. We'll start packing your things this week. Don't worry, we'll take care of everything." She thought she was reassuring me. She had no idea her words were already evidence number 57 on my list. I told her calmly, "That's fine, Lisa. I'll be ready." She didn't notice the steel in my tone. She never noticed anything beyond her own ambition. But I was ready. Because Charles and I had chosen that very day for the reveal. No more shadows, no more waiting. The time had come to turn their game inside out. When Lisa and Mark arrived that afternoon, they expected to find me half-packed, docile, waiting for instructions. Instead, they found me standing in the dining room, cane in one hand, Charles by my side, a thick envelope, and the little recorder resting on the table. Lisa froze mid-stride. "What's this?" she demanded, her smile faltering. Charles spoke first, his voice calm but firm. "This is a notice. Mr. Harris will not be leaving his home. And these recordings," he lifted the device and pressed play, "prove exactly what kind of scheme has been running here." Lisa's voice filled the room, unmistakable, undeniable. "Once he's in the home, we'll have access to the accounts by Christmas." The words crackled through the speaker like thunder, Mark's face drained of color. Lisa lunged forward, shouting, "That's out of context! He doesn't even know how to use that thing." But Charles didn't flinch. "A court will decide the context," he said evenly. "And when they do, you'll be answering for fraud, coercion, and attempted theft." Mark stammered, "Dad, please, this isn't—" I cut him off, my voice stronger than it had been in years. "You sat by while she plotted to throw me away. You nodded while she spoke of selling this house. You told me I was a burden. You didn't just sit in silence, Mark. You joined her." He dropped his head, shame burning his face. But Lisa, prideful to the last, kept fighting. "You think a tape and some old lawyer will save you? You're 72, John. The courts won't waste their time on you. They'll side with us, with the ones who actually matter." That was when Charles opened the envelope and placed its contents on the table. Thick, notarized papers with official seals gleamed under the light. "These are the documents transferring every asset into an irrevocable trust," he announced. "The sole beneficiary is Zoe Harris, effective immediately. Nothing you do, no paper you wave, can undo this. You have no claim here. None." Lisa's eyes widened, then narrowed. She reached for the papers, but I stepped forward, my cane striking the floor with a crack. "Don't touch them," I growled. For the first time, she stumbled back, fear flickering in her eyes. I leaned in, my voice low but sharp as a blade. "You thought I was weak. You thought age meant blindness. But while you were scheming, I was preparing. While you were laughing, I was recording. While you were planning to erase me, I was ensuring you would erase yourselves." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Mark couldn't lift his head. Lisa clutched her useless folder, her knuckles white. And I, an old man they had dismissed, stood taller than I had in years. The twist was complete. Their triumph had turned to ashes, their victory into defeat. And as the weight of their betrayal collapsed around them, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Dignity, burning bright, untouchable. The dining room was no longer just a room. It was a courtroom, a battlefield, a stage where every mask was about to shatter. Lisa stood on one side of the table, clutching her folder of worthless documents, her eyes darting wildly. Mark sat behind her, pale, hollow, his silence screaming louder than any words. Beside me, Charles laid out the evidence like a general arranging his weapons. And around us, my niece Claire, my cousin Daniel, old Mrs. Thompson from next door. They watched, silent jurors summoned by Lisa's arrogance, now forced to witness her collapse. Charles pressed play again. Lisa's voice hissed out of the recorder, cruel and clear. Once he's in the home, we'll have access to the accounts by Christmas. The words hung in the air, undeniable. Claire gasped. Daniel muttered, "My God." Mrs. Thompson shook her head in disgust. The very witnesses Lisa had gathered to applaud her scheme were now recoiling from her. The courtroom she built had turned against her in an instant. Lisa lunged forward, knocking against the table. "That recording means nothing. He doesn't even understand half of what's happening. He's confused. He's senile." She spat the words, her voice shrill, desperate. But her panic betrayed her. She was no longer the confident planner. She was the cornered thief, clawing for escape. I rose slowly from my chair, every joint aching but my voice steady. "Senile?" I repeated, my eyes fixed on hers. "Senile men don't hire lawyers in secret. Senile men don't build trusts that you can't touch. Senile men don't record your every whisper. You wanted me to be weak, but weakness is what you saw because you were blind. What you see standing here is strength." Her lips trembled. She turned to Mark, eyes pleading, but he looked away. The shame on his face was heavy, his shoulders slumped. He whispered, barely audible, "She's right, Dad. I went along with it." His words cracked in the air like a confession in church. He buried his face in his hands, and for a moment I almost pitied him. Almost. But Lisa had no pity. She shoved him aside, her voice rising, wild. "This is ridiculous. You think a piece of paper and a dusty old lawyer will stop me? Courts side with families. Judges don't waste their time on washed-up old men clinging to their houses. This isn't over." That's when Charles calmly placed the notarized trust documents on the table, sliding them toward her. The thick seals gleamed under the light. "It is over," he said, his voice like stone. "Every asset has been transferred to an irrevocable trust. The sole beneficiary is Zoe Harris. You have no authority, no claim, no power. These papers you forced him to sign, they are legally worthless." He tapped the folder she clutched. "Just like your lies." Lisa's hands shook as she opened her folder, rifling through the documents she thought were her prize. For the first time, she realized they were nothing but ashes. Her face drained of color. The room was silent except for the sound of papers fluttering to the floor. I stepped closer, planting my cane firmly on the hardwood. The crack echoed. "You asked who would believe me," I said. My voice low, deliberate, each word sharp as glass. "They don't need to believe me. The law already does, and the law does not bow to greed." The jurors, my family, my neighbors, watched in stunned silence. The cousin who had nodded along during Lisa's meeting now spoke, his voice filled with disgust. "Lisa, this is unforgivable." Mrs. Thompson, kind old soul that she was, muttered, "I never thought I'd see betrayal this low." Their words cut deeper into Lisa than mine ever could. Her audience had turned executioner. Lisa's pride cracked. Her eyes darted around the room, searching desperately for an ally. She reached toward Mark, but he recoiled, shaking his head. She screamed then, raw, uncontrolled. "You can't do this. This is my life, too. I gave everything for this family, and you leave me with nothing?" Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of rage, of entitlement denied. I leaned in, close enough for her to see the fire in my eyes. "No, Lisa, you gave nothing. You tried to take everything, and now you are left with what you deserve, nothing." The words landed like a hammer. The room was silent, except for her ragged breathing. For years, I had been treated as fragile, dismissed, controlled. But now, standing in that room, I was iron, unbreakable. Mark finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Dad, I don't know what to say." I looked at him, long and hard. "Then don't," I replied. "You already said enough when you stayed silent." His face collapsed into shame, and he turned away. Lisa slumped into the chair, her body shaking, her hands covering her face. The predator had become the prey, the puppeteer tangled in her own strings. Her silence now was the silence of defeat. I turned to the witnesses, the people she had summoned to legitimize her crime. "You came here to see me surrender," I said quietly. "Instead, you have seen the truth, This house is not for sale. My dignity is not for sale. My life is not for sale. I let the words hang in the air, each one a verdict. Claire nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "Uncle John," she whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's not too late to stand for what's right," I told her. And in that moment, I saw the tide had fully turned. Lisa was finished. The climax wasn't loud. It wasn't fists slamming or voices screaming. The climax was silence, the heavy, suffocating silence of betrayal exposed, of greed stripped naked, of dignity standing unbroken. That silence was louder than any roar. It was the sound of justice. And as I stood there, cane in hand, chest rising with steady breath, I knew the war was over. They had come to erase me. Instead, they had erased themselves. The storm broke, and then it passed. Not all at once, not in a single day, but slowly, like a tide receding and leaving behind the wreckage of what it swallowed. After the showdown in my dining room, Lisa stopped coming. The woman who had once marched through my halls as if she owned them disappeared without a word. Mark stayed away too, maybe out of shame, maybe out of fear. The silence was thick, but it was better than their presence. At least silence doesn't lie. Charles filed the necessary papers with the court. The recordings, the trust documents, the sham papers Lisa had tried to force on me, they all became part of a file stamped with the seal of the state. Within weeks, the judge issued an order forbidding Lisa and Mark from interfering with my affairs. Their scheme had not only failed, it had collapsed in broad daylight. I didn't ask for them to face prison, though Charles said there was enough evidence for charges. I didn't want them behind bars. Punishment wasn't my goal. My goal was dignity. And dignity was already mine again. Still, Lisa couldn't leave quietly. She tried to spin her story to the family, whispering lies about how I had been manipulated, how Charles had tricked me. But whispers can't erase evidence. Every cousin, every neighbor, every witness had heard her voice on that tape. They had seen her greed exposed. She found herself isolated, her reputation in ashes. Mark kept his head down, silent as ever, ashamed but unwilling to confront his wife. In their house, I imagine the silence is heavier than it ever was here. And me? I stayed in my home. My home. The same walls that Mary decorated, the same floor where my children took their first steps, the same porch where I drank coffee with her on summer mornings. I walked through each room slowly, touching the furniture, the photos, the memories. I felt them all return to me, not as objects, but as proof that I had not been erased, that I would not be erased. Life didn't suddenly become easy. My knees still ache, my breath still shortens when I climb the stairs. The nights still stretch long and lonely without Mary beside me. But those struggles are mine. They are not excuses for someone else to lock me away, to sell my life piece by piece. They are not reasons for my dignity to be signed away on a line. I will carry them myself, because that is what it means to live. Zoe visits often now. She is the only one who comes without an agenda, without calculation. She sits with me on the porch, her laughter filling the air, her questions endless. She asks about her grandmother, about my work, about what it was like raising her father. I answer everything. She deserves to know, because knowledge is the true inheritance, not just money or property. I want her to understand that what we pass on is not just wealth, but dignity. That is the legacy Lisa could never touch. One evening, as the sun set and the cicadas sang, Zoe asked me, "Grandpa, why didn't you just yell at them? Why didn't you tell them no from the start?" I smiled, slow and tired, but proud. Because sometimes, child, if you yell too soon, they cover their ears. But if you let them talk, let them believe they've won, they trap themselves. Then, when the truth comes, it doesn't just silence them, it destroys their lies. She thought about it for a long moment, then nodded. I saw the spark of understanding in her eyes, and I knew Mary had been right. Zoe was the one who would carry our family's dignity forward. I don't know how much time I have left in this house. None of us know how many days remain. But I do know this. Every day I wake up here is a victory. Every step across these floors, every meal cooked in this kitchen, every laugh with Zoe is proof that I was not erased, that my life was not stolen, that I chose my own ending. Sometimes at night, I sit in the living room and listen to the quiet. I remember Lisa's words, sharp and cruel. He'll sign anything. He doesn't even know what he's signing. I remember Mark's silence, his failure to defend me, and I remember the look on their faces when Charles laid the trust documents on the table, when the recorders sang their betrayal back to them. Those memories don't haunt me. They fortify me. They remind me that even in old age, even when the world calls you weak, you can still stand, you can still fight, and you can still win. To anyone listening, to anyone who has felt that same sting, the sting of betrayal by those you trusted most, hear me. Age is not erasure. Age is not defeat. They will try to call you a burden. They will try to silence you, to control you, to write the last chapter of your story without your permission. Do not let them. Your dignity is not theirs to take. It is yours to defend. Maybe your weapon is silence. Maybe it is patience. Maybe it is a voice that finally rises when the time is right. But whatever it is, hold on to it. Because the moment you surrender your dignity, you surrender everything. And nothing they promise you in return, comfort, care, security, can replace it. The true inheritance, the one I leave to Zoe, the one I now share with anyone who hears my story, is simple. Dignity must be guarded. Dignity must be fought for. Dignity must be lived until the very last breath. Now, when I sit on the porch and watch Zoe chase fireflies across the yard, I feel peace. Not because everything is perfect, not because betrayal has vanished, but because I won. Not in court, not in money, but in the place that matters most, my soul. I am still here. I am still John Harris. And my story does not end with surrender. It ends with justice. So, if you believe dignity must never be stolen, if you've ever felt the weight of betrayal, stand with me. Say it out loud. Say it clear. Justice.